Hey there, welcome to episode 30 of the Quaggling Sand audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo, coming at you on this Wednesday, June 5, 2024. My voice has been completely and totally wrecked by the whatever's in the air. This is the tail end of allergy season here in the greater Vegas area, so bear with me. It's really kind of annoying to speak. I can only imagine the joy of listening to something like it's not quite scratchy, but it's definitely not working correctly. But all that said, today we're going to speak about a startup project that we worked on in Silicon Valley back in, I honestly can't remember exactly the year, but it was something like 2008, 2009, 2007, maybe it was 2007, somewhere in there. It was kind of a side project, but it was a cool idea, and it's something I've been pondering bringing back. So rate this startup, today's episode. Hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you are able to see a description of today's episode, the show notes contained within, the summary of today's episode, which I will read to you now. Silicon Valley, the place where any idea seemed to have a chance, and where we made a reasonable go at a novel review scheme, which I think still has a chance this many years later. So again, I think it was, let's say it was 15 years ago, something like that, 17, something in there. But this many years later, I haven't seen this approach. So let's see, maybe you have some thoughts. The link section as usual, there are the two usual shameless self-promotion links and a third, Wikipedia, of course. Wikipedia is a great place to begin your journey learning about something, but please don't end it there. BuyMeCoffee.com/Dan Hugo, my profile page pointing at all of my various undertakings, which are all powered by coffee. You are under no obligation to purchase anything, to spend any money, but I do use the freeform profile page, not completely enamored with the tools to edit and the way they display it, but it's a reasonable, well-known place to promote different project links and so on. So I can write some description. I even have links to my favorite coffee beans if you're curious. So as I update things, which I've talked about before, if you happen to if you're bored, you can listen to the Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program. You can also listen to the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program, wherein I am describing some of the efforts to get the information sharing platform and then the surrounding business as a startup here in the greater Vegas area up and running. So some of the stuff that I'm doing, I could very easily launch a junk website, but once you put stuff out there, you have to somehow deal with it and support it. So being an army of one, it's a 6 in one, half a dozen in the other kind of thing. So website, plural, websites are still on the to-do list under everything else, and everything, of course, is tied for priority one. My other shameless self-promotion tool, Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/Dan Hugo. I know it's coffee.com, but they spell it funny. So Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/Dan Hugo, where I will begin announcing specific launches of things, and sort of interesting, I suppose, apropos for today, rather than like a profile page as Buy Me a Coffee has, they do more sort of activity updates, I think it is. So you see more of an update stream. So you can make, or I can make, and then you can see blog posts basically, or other updates. So it's not, so Buy Me a Coffee is sort of a one-stop. Ko-fi, more of a updates, press releases and such, images and videos and stuff. So they're kind of orthogonal in that regard, and so I should be making better use of them than I have been. Neither is a place where I expect you or require you to spend money, but a couple people have, and that's appreciated, of course. So all of my projects are powered by coffee, but they also are pointing to or talking about other things which are more tangible, I suppose, more more like actual business ideas or substantial pursuits. So the podcasting, the audio program production, and then other notions that might fall out of that from content creator standpoint, video, real-time stream, interactive, and so on and so on. All the things that people are doing, they have a place in this, but these are not intended to be my day job. So, and a little bonus link, like I said, a Wikipedia link about Bayesian inference. I'm not going to harp on the math too much, but in this project, for the sake of providing weights, as in the weight or credibility score of an individual contributor to a stream of reviews or a collection of reviews. So the weightings could be adjusted, and we being Kevin, implemented a Bayesian inference scheme to continuously adjust weightings based on different inputs, which I'll describe some of today. So Bayesian inference, it's a classic science that still seems to work. Comes in handy now and then. If you've ever seen a spam filter, if you've ever experienced a spam filter, Bayesian inference is used in many a spam filter, although the tools have evolved over the years. But pretty reasonable approach is to make a guess at whether something is spam, and then you apply the Bayesian inference rules and the weightings that have been developed. So that's why when you mark things as spam or not spam, those adjustments are fed back into the weightings. So if you know how spam filtering behaves, you don't need to know how it works, but if you know how it behaves, then you can assume that if you saw a review that was spammy, not good, trolling, junk, passive-aggressive anger, excessively negative, or an outlier more generally, and you marked it as such, then if more people did that, then you would start to see that, spam would say a sender, but in this case a reviewer, they tend to submit more spammy content or review submissions, so their weighting would be adjusted accordingly to maybe devalue their submissions. And of course these would change over time so that it could go back up. But anyway, we'll get into that a little bit more during the story, which I will tell now. Silicon Valley 2K, it was my second pass through the Silicon Valley. I've told this story in a previous episode. There was a part 1 and a part 2. I departed when the dot-com bomb was going off, when I was working at Leapfrog Toys, wrapped up the project, moved back to Phoenix, the Phoenix area where I grew up. I grew up in Glendale, Arizona. Finished the project, signed off the last of the stuff, headed one way out of Silicon Valley, back to Phoenix at the end of August 2001. So nothing interesting happened in early September 2001 that I can remember. Maybe one or two things. But anyway, yeah, so that was a bit of a change. So I spent 4 years in Phoenix and decided it was maybe it would be better to try Silicon Valley again for part 2. So there I was. I have talked about RegularDB and Nookie Map. Talked about them in episode 6 of this very program, in fact. These were 2 startup ideas I had. One was about connecting regular customers to the people that worked at a business. Facebook pages sort of took that on, and now, of course, so there was a time when you would just follow your favorite, whatever, bartender, employee at a place, even hairstylists, so estheticians, nail person, coffee shop barista. You could follow follow me on Facebook, and I'll tell you when I'm working, and this happened a lot. And then somewhere along the line, it was like, well, but you're sharing your life with your customers. So Facebook came out with pages, but RegularDB was essentially a structured way of sharing schedules, different workplace locations, time off, like, I won't be at work for 2 weeks. So people wouldn't spend their time concerned, like, hey, where's my favorite barista? They're not here anymore. Oh, no, they're on vacation. So it was basically a customer engagement tool that would benefit the establishment, the business, with engagement with hyperlocal customers. So anyway, I talked about that more in that episode. And Nookie Map was a new take on meeting people for socializing. It was essentially, why are we spending all of our time? And at the time, it was Yahoo Personals and various other, Match.com and all that. Fill out this profile. I know this was before Kettle of Fish was it, and so it was a little bit simpler. Some of the sites they would do these rolling questionnaires. They would do answer these 400 questions. So they were trying to do a very analytical matchmaking approach, I guess, to this, and people would sometimes pay for the privilege of participating in this weird dark science. So Nookie Map was much simpler. Like, hey, there's a bunch of people. Like, you'd say, here's my general age and my identity, couple of factors, and then here's what I'm looking for. Same factors, right? So if you are cis male, 32 years old, you're interested in someone cis female, perhaps, who is 18 to 40 or whatever, right? So then, if you and people who match that sort of interest group happen to be in the same locations or might end up in the same locations, you would see on a map, like, oh, look, there are people over there at an event, at a venue. Nothing in the way of photos, nothing in the way of identifying information. It wouldn't be used for stalking. Just simply, oh, at this time, there are people who I might be interested in meeting. This is not like getting married today. Nothing so granular as like, what are your political views? What is your hair color? What is your, just to be in proximity with people who might be barely, slightly, or maybe more interested in you and they, and you end up near each other and then see what happens. So very simple approach to meeting people. So RegulaDB, Nookie Map, episode 6, if you want to hear more about those. So these were hyper-local venue-oriented ideas, right? So you would meet people. You'd either go to a place because you knew the people who knew your name, to make a Cheers reference, were probably there. They're on the schedule. They should be working at my favorite pub, coffee shop, hair salon, bookstore, whatever, wherever there are regulars and the connection was desirable. Done. Or to go and meet civilians of any kind, people that are just there to meet other people, right? So pretty straightforward. So these were venue oriented. Presumably you would not, although you could all be at a park. So a park is arguably a venue, but generally speaking, you could meet at a bookstore, a restaurant, a coffee shop, grocery store, you name it. Venue oriented. So I have also talked previously about my time in Silicon Valley from part 1. It was an education on its own. For some odd reason, I returned. That's part 2. But I did return, I will tell you this, because when I was living in Phoenix at the time, I did do, I worked as a consultant on a couple of things. In fact, Salon.com project remotely was the reason I ended up moving back to work for them and to begin part 2 of Silicon Valley. But I found the entrepreneurialism in Phoenix circa 2001 to 2005 was stifling. It was difficult to find people who were quite so entrepreneurial, like outside the box thinking entrepreneurial. So I was disappointed in that. And by the way, I find the same thing here in Vegas. So to me, it made more sense to give it another go until 2013 when a house fire would change the plans a bit. So there we are. Silicon Valley 2005, actually. Returned to the place and got an apartment near downtown, not an apartment, a duplex. Got a half a duplex. The owner's on the other side. And I was easily 6 to 10 minutes, depending on if a train was coming, because there was a crossing of the tracks, but I could walk to downtown Sunnyvale, hang out with small businesses, hang out in the three or four, I think it was 4. Well, there were definitely 3 arguably 4, I think, coffee shops on a street that was like 250 yards long, maybe. So I would hang out in these coffee shops, and on the one hand, one aspect of this was that there were other people hanging out in coffee shops working on their own startup ideas. So the precursor to co-work office spaces and so on. So the coffee shop laptop lifestyle was a thing in Silicon Valley some time ago. But as well, I was interacting with these small businesses. So I was talking about RegularDB. Nookie Map was my first mobile application idea that I was trying out on my new Android One device, which I've talked about already in that other episode, the flip out screen with the keyboard and the old school Android and Eclipse based development tools and so on. So using location based mobile application development notions, I was working on these things in a coffee shop. So I was actually sitting in I cannot remember the name of the other shop. Anyway, I was sitting in one of the coffee shops working on my Nookie Map. I would show it to people. I would talk to the same people every day, or some other random people that would come in and, hey, what do you think of this? So it was useful. It was interesting. And Yelp was coming on strong. Reviews of Yelp tended to be skewed a little bit. It was kind of a mess, really, looking back. Reviews were skewed mostly because monetization by Yelp was very important. Biased reviews could be more exciting. They could generate more traffic and interaction. They had an elite program, so they wanted to engage the more active people on the site by not quite gamifying it, by offering this badge, Yelp Elite 2008, 2009, etc. So I never took part in that, but I did go to 1 or 2 Yelp Elite events. So Yelp would host elite member events. So it was invite only. All the Yelp Elite members would come to these events, and the participants, so I went to a food truck event, for example, the food trucks were expected to provide free food to the Yelp Elite in exchange for what you would hope would be strong positive reviews. But none of that was guaranteed in any way, so it ended up being rather expensive with very little return on that investment. So it's kind of a broken system. So Yelp, to my eye, looked a little shady, seemed to be acting a little, well, certainly not with the best interests of the businesses, right? They were all about the traffic and being young and cool and enabling people to vent their frustrations and passive aggression and all that. So I thought their overly sensational reviews and reviewers were problematic without being truly valuable to anyone, really. And I'll get into some of the reasoning. And of course, the platform we were building was to counter some of those considerations. So we can address those that way. I was sitting in my usual coffee shop, not working on Nookie Map, but just, I don't know what I was working on. There was a coffee shop right at the corner. So when I crossed the street to get onto Murphy Avenue in downtown Sunnyvale, California, I would cross the train tracks, go through the little mini, not quite a train station, but like nobody ever worked there. So it was just a place with a parking lot and you can get on the train. So cut across the street onto Murphy Avenue. The first shop on the corner, I cannot remember the name of it. It was Coffee and More, maybe. So I went there for the coffee part. So I was sitting in that place, and I had written a review, of course, for one of my go-to working outside of my home spots. And the manager, I cannot remember her name. I knew all the people there, of course. I've seen other people who are regulars at coffee shops, and they hang out with the people that work there outside of work and all that. And I'm like, yeah, I remember those days. Anybody who's been in the lock-in, anybody who they end up in the kitchen of their favorite restaurant, or they're like, oh, hey, you want to stick around after close? We're going to go to another event. We're going to go to a movie, going to go play pool, whatever. So it's fun. It makes your social outings something more than just being a customer at a business. So while I was sitting there, I get a little, like, a quiet name, like, hey, come here. And it turns out Yelp, their outside sales, cold calling to try to get more paid advertising, called this coffee shop and asked them if they would be interested in paid advertising. And they read my review to the manager as an example of how Yelp is an effective marketing tool. So while they were reading it to her, she's like, they're reading me your review right now. I was like, oh, interesting. So it wasn't a huge deal because anybody can just read the review online, but it was a little weird that they were cherry picking. Like, I don't know if they would also say, well, here's a 1-star review for you to consider. So a little weird, not even unethical, I guess, depending on how you look at it, but it was humorous, but it was one of those milestones along the path of this particular journey that, I've just recalled it for you. So I think Yelp today is a bit more reasonable. I think they're a little bit more useful, a little bit. They still suffer from some of the same problems, which we'll get into. They've added a little bit of granularity to the star system, but I think the star system is fundamentally broken, which we'll get into. And there's the aging problem, which we'll also get into. They do enable business feedback, which they mark appropriately. So there is a possibility to respond to a particularly negative review or to any review. So you'll see some people saying, oh, thanks for coming out. Appreciate your compliments. Thanks for posting the pictures, etc. So that's generally good. But these are human readable blocks of text, and we can speak of this now in plain terms in the AI era. You can interpret those in more useful ways as normal text, right? You can say, oh, this seems to be a positive review. The response from the business owner was positive, and you can do more interesting things today than that even. But these are blocks of text that you have to make assessments of, and I think we can do better. So that was Yelp circa 2000. So 2005, 2010, somewhere in there. And again, it has changed. I think it has become a little bit more, maybe it's become a little bit more mature, but I also think that maybe because of Google Local, which I think Yelp sued at one point, I think Google Local, as being a substantially established player with Google Maps, and then adding the ability to include reviews of businesses from their own Google Local platform, which is tied to the Maps, venue locations, and so on. Maybe that competition made them take a serious look at how they were functioning and maybe improved a little bit, but I still see the fundamental problem with both of those platforms, and then other platforms where, opaque reviews. So we'll get into that. But I think the fact that there are more tools, that there are more vertical tools, right? Especially restaurant reviews. Everybody's doing restaurant reviews. Everybody's doing foodie videos, Instagram, TikTok, etc. So I think sorry, my phone is beeping at me. I think the terrain has changed enough, but not enough, but enough to make Yelp a little bit better, but not much more useful, if that makes sense. Maybe. I mean, I really haven't I haven't taken a serious look at the terrain, the environment of reviews in a long time, although I did, in light of the Rabbit R1 and Humane Pin reviews, especially from Marcus Brownlee, I did Brownlee, right? I did comment on reviews in general, reviewers especially. So when you write a review or when you make a YouTube review, you're not servicing the business or the product manufacturer, or you are reviewing something in service to your customers, which is your audience, your readership, your viewership. So people are saying, you're being too critical or you're going to destroy the company. And his response was, I think, too measured, But the reality is, if you are an honest reviewer, if you give an honest take, if you give the business an honest try, and you are honest and transparent with your assessment, then you are adding value if the business is allowed to address the elements of the review that it can address. Otherwise, you're just lashing out. So, for example, with the Rabbit R1 and the Humane, I believe, at least with the Humane pin, the Humane company, someone at the company responded to Marcus Brownlee. I don't know if it was on Twitter or YouTube, but they posted a response somewhere for public consumption that said, thanks for the honest feedback. Like, they'll take it as things to work on. And I don't know if Rabbit R1 Rabbit had a similar response, but they may have. There are some other things going on with Rabbit though, so who knows. But the take home is you can be honest with your reviews. If you're overly negative, if you're passively aggressively lashing out, retaliating for some bad feeling or whatever. My ex was working there, I'm going to slam the whole place. That's silly. But if it's an honest concern and it can be addressed, I think that should be a part of the workflow of reviews that say, hey, I identified this problem, I wrote about it. The owner or the management or whoever had the ability, whoever was empowered to address, did so and said, hey, we took that, we fixed it. The wait time is better. The seating is more comfortable. The food ingredients are made more clear for special dietary, whatever it is, whatever was raised. Once it's addressed, that should be made visible also to give the business or the service or whomever a chance to respond in a useful way. That makes the review more valuable, I think, to everybody. For example, the way this came about, aside from my Yelp interactions, my ex-girlfriend at the time, well, she still is, my ex-girlfriend though, her sister and her sister's husband's father, are we clear? Were opening a new barbecue restaurant. Yes, barbecue, near the San Jose airport. The food would be excellent. It was her, the entire family, my ex-girlfriend's entire family, very restaurant and food capable. Restaurant business, multiple siblings and family members, all excellent, delicious. So it would be difficult to be honestly negative outside of like startup pains, like, oh, the flavors are off, or some honest reviews along those lines could have been acceptable if people would revisit, like, oh, okay, they adjusted the coleslaw and it's delicious, things like that. So, I would say during the first grand opening, first week or two, rough spots. So honest reviews with honest updates, that would be fine. However, and the location was tricky. It was behind the airport. If you know where San Jose Airport is, if you say the front of the airport faces the freeway, the 101 freeway, behind the airport, there's there's kind of an industrial road. There's some industrial businesses back there. There were a couple of restaurants. Anyway, so a tricky spot, but people were finding it. They were developing their business. And then unfortunately, the father in that character rundown from the beginning of the story, this part of the story, he decided to shut down because he wasn't happy with the amount of business. So such is life. It was only, I think, 3 or 4 months in. So very unfortunate, but none of this could have been helped by this fact that before the restaurant was opened, they were still working on the tenant improvements, and it was previously a restaurant, so the parking lot was a parking lot, but the restaurant itself was not open for business. So there were multiple negative, like 1-star reviews on different platforms, Yahoo reviews. Does that even exist anymore? Yelp, etc. 1 star, this place isn't even open, which is ridiculous. Except for one thing, you can't get rid of those reviews. You cannot remove a review. Yeah, well, at the time, that was the fact, right? The business owner has no say in which reviews remain, and there was no, because when you think about it, the business owner could elect to argue that those negative reviews are false, they should be removed, to skew the reviews towards positive. So how does the business owner assess honesty in the review? Whether it was so it becomes something of a complicated problem. So the common practice was for a particular platform to say, hey, anybody wants to post, it stays. It's up to the person who posted it to update it or remove it. So that made things a little bit tricky. Clearly, what would be a truly excellent and underappreciated barbecue establishment with some truly, there were people from, I'm from Texas, I grew up with barbecue, and this is even better. Some very sincere compliments in person, usually. So the business no doubt suffered because of, starting with opening their doors with a slew of 1-star reviews for no reason. I laugh now because it's so ridiculous, but at the time it was very frustrating. So we had an idea, and we pursued it. So the problem. There are a few problems, but we started with these particular areas. Reviews tend to be anecdotal, without structure. So you can, how many times have you seen this? I was out with my boyfriend. I was with my family after graduation. I was just enjoying a promotion at work, and we went out to celebrate. So the context given is, especially for a negative review, I was there to have a nice time, and because of this place, I had a negative time. So the anecdote becomes a part of a point-in-time review of a business that may have been having a bad night or who knows. So there's a whole bunch of things that will come together in an emotional appeal to vent frustrations and blame the business. I'm being overly general there, but that's something to think about. So that the reviews would be anecdotal. Somebody can just write and write. They could write 10 paragraphs of we went there to try, and this happened, and that, and the person looked at me funny. So there's all kinds of anecdotes that hide the specifics, if any, about the food, the environment, what do you call it? The atmosphere, the parking, whether the business is open or not. So anecdotal. Star ratings are opaque and vague with absolutely no standards. So if I give a restaurant 1 star because they served me raw food, like this food was undercooked and there were other problems, and so I've arrived at a 1 star out of 5 rating. And another person says I gave them 1 star because they weren't open, because the place was still under construction. Those 2 1-star reviews are completely different, but they are averaged as though they're the same. And then reviews never go away. This was more true then. I don't know if it's changed over time, but because of that platform sort of presumed authenticity and credibility notion, reviews would be taken down in egregious circumstances. Clearly hate speech and other sort of low-hanging fruit reasons to remove a review. But in general, negative reviews would remain until the person who posted it edited it, adjusted it, removed it, etc. So a review would remain a 1-star review because your restaurant isn't open yet, before you open for business ever, remains. That's a problem. Sensational or flowery, perhaps angry zinger reviews, which people are wont to do. Why? Because they get more response. The individual reviewer gets more people giving them, hey, this was useful, this was funny, as Yelp offers. So you can give feedback to the person that posts. And then if you become a frequent poster and you have these sensational, flowery, or angry reviews, like a 1-star review, like, let me tell you what happened. And like a gossipy those are fun, funny, entertaining. They get attention. Are they useful? Maybe not. Since the hosting platform benefits from this traffic and engagement, they're not really going to try to stop it. So the review that goes on for those 10 paragraphs may have like 2 useful bits of information, right? The eggs were properly cooked and the parking was fine, but you got to wade through 10 paragraphs of text. But it gets a lot of attention because people are marking it as funny and useful and whatever. Never an opportunity to say this review is misleading or overly negative or passive aggressive or retaliatory. So you have to wade through all that. And the engagement and traffic that go along with these sorts of sensational reviews, they get amplified because of this attention feedback loop. You're of course going to, here's the most popular reviews, or here are the most, whatever it is, right? The most extreme. Like if you give 1 star, if you give 2 stars, you might be less likely to be amplified by the platform than if you give 1 star, right? We're going to show you the 5 stars and the 1 stars. Without a technically correct or even useful way to average star ratings, and I mean technically correct as in you cannot consider like I'm going to give a thing 5 stars and you're going to give it 4 stars because, and I've done this before, I don't give 5-star ratings just because every once in a while there might be a 5-star where you're just blown away. So you save that. So you give a 4-star rating as your top, like 100%, and you save the 5th star for the ridiculous outlier, right? So amazing. I might give a 5-star review for anything that I consider to be 100%. So our ratings, when they are summed up, will be 4.5 stars. And if more people think like the 4-star as top level person reviews, their star reviews will move towards 4 or below, because some people might be thinking 3 stars is my, like, it was good, it met my expectations, I'm going to give 3 stars. That is a reasonable way to look at things. I went to a new restaurant, their food was good, service was good, it was as expected, they met all of the minimums you should have for a restaurant. 3 stars. Their food might be really good, and there might be a great establishment that's very popular, but your 3-star rating to you says this was a fine place. Somebody else says that was not as good as the 4-star, and then the 4-star guy is like, I don't give 5 stars, and the 5-star guy is like, this place was a really good place. So those star ratings are meaningless from a mathematical perspective. So technically, no way to average those correctly in a useful way. And those star ratings might linger long after any issues were addressed. So this restaurant isn't open yet. Once they're open, the 1-star review should go away. Somebody could give a 1-star review with no explanation. That would also remain, right? So might be unable to undo sensational damage once it's done. So once you have a plethora of low ratings and reviews before a place even opens, or before they begin conducting business, or in their early days, and they're not allowed to be removed or edited, but for the original submitter, you're kind of stuck with that. And depending on where your community of potential customers places the importance of reviews like that, that could really be an undoing. And there have been over the years cases where you have gaming, right? You have like, let's all write negative reviews of this restaurant. So I'm going to guess Chick-fil-A has gotten that, but they're a big company, so it's a little bit more difficult. But if a new independent business establishment opens and somebody doesn't like them, you just get 10 or 20 people. Maybe you start a couple of fake accounts. You're like, oh, all these 1-star reviews are by accounts without profile pictures, and they've only reviewed one place, and they've been members since yesterday. So those are not completely unobvious, but it is possible to be a little bit more realistic. Here again, the problem with these opaque reviews, or the opaque ratings and anecdotal reviews, they're not always legitimate, they're not always useful, they're not always treated as real data. They're treated as information. They're treated as like completely valid right up front. They're just like getting different star ratings. Those are data points, but they are not correct on each face of each star rating. Right? So those were the problems we were tackling. What did we come up with? Well, first of all, micro reviews. This is when Twitter was really, super popular. Was kind of new, fresh and new. It had more features, like you could geotag your posts and all this other stuff. So reviews in the micro review context. Reviews would be very brief, like a Twitter-sized comment. So micro review, or a Twitter-sized comment. And this is when Twitter had 140 characters. I think it was 140 character maximum, and it was still called Twitter. So a long time ago. So that meandering anecdotes were discouraged. So you couldn't start off a micro review with, I was out with my parents after graduation. Then you're done. So it would keep you to the point. So 140 is maybe a little bit light, but it wouldn't be, space to write a book. So brief blocks of text. Why would we do that? Well, you can categorize a particular micro review. So you may say, I'm gonna make a micro comment here about customer service at this business, or the location, or the parking situation, or product quality, or what, it's food or whatever it is, or other aspects of a particular type of business. I went there, my credit card was charged twice because their point of sale thing was broken. Okay. That you don't have to write the rest of your life story there. You can just say that their point of sale system failed and I was double charged. And then 2 or 3 days later, when it gets resolved, if that long, then that review should be like, oh yeah, the charges were reversed, problem solved. That would eventually disappear. We'll get to that. So you focus the item instead of a 10-paragraph assessment with a backstory and future plans in life and how this was a seminal moment in whatever. What was the problem? What was the situation? And where in this group of categories would it be placed? Then you can actually say, oh, over this window of time, this particular business was having problems with their point of sale terminal. Their parking lot was having some construction done. So the parking was a problem. Those things have been fixed. So you can look at time frames. You can look at specific areas of concern and issues that were raised. And these are, I'm focusing on the negative stuff right now. You could also look at positive over intervals of time in focused areas rather than having to pick through and see what the sentiment was in larger blocks of text. Now, in modern times, that is more possible with artificial intelligence, large language models, and so on. However, there's really no need, because first of all, you're relying on AI tools to parse these things, but that doesn't help you. Like, what is it going to do? Summarize for you? Why don't you just have the person writing the review keep it really tight, right? You don't have to go on for 10 paragraphs if you can go on for 139 characters. Be specific, be economical with words so that you choose them correctly and don't spend your characters on passive aggression. Spend them on honest, useful review. You can submit here are 10 things I want to say about this new restaurant. 2 about customer service, 1 about the parking lot, 1 about the menu item, 3 about the bathroom, whatever it is. So you make your review not anecdotal, but focused, brief, succinct, if you like, and individually, well, you can say separable, but individually addressable, so that rather than saying, well, this whole 10 paragraphs is riddled with errors and passive-aggressive complaining and inaccuracies and so on. But if you submit 10 micro reviews and one of them ends up being kind of wrong, like, oh, I misread that situation, or, oh, this one totally fixed 10 minutes after you left, this was addressed, bathroom plumbing issue or whatever. It could be something super simple that should not take out a business because reality sets in, right? So each micro review could be addressed by the author or an authority, not the author, by an authority and the author, right? So each micro review, somebody who authors it, there could be a response from the authority, the business owner, manager, etc. And the author of that concern could say, oh, okay, I'll go ahead and delete this. So that, hey, we fixed this already, or hey, why don't you come back and try this again, etc. So that offers the author of that micro review the opportunity to take it back, delete it. I think the notion of editing would be bad. I think you should just delete it and you could write a new one, right? So from a historical perspective, you could show like, hey, when this business gets negative reviews, they address them, they're fixed. So you could maintain that state as more data. Like, hey, this business actually listens to their customers and their concerns and addresses them, and everybody ends up happy at the end, right? Those are interesting things to know. So the other version of that handling, though, is if you are angry and you post a micro review that says the wait staff of this restaurant was inattentive, they spit in our food. You can make all kinds of horrific accusations. The sky's the limit. If you are uncontested, if there's no resistance to spouting these things off, you can say whatever you want. Now, if the business owner does not respond for whatever reason, it is also possible for the population of fellow reviewers, the peers, don't say community. I don't think it's a community, but it's people who also go to that restaurant, who may have been there at the same time, who may have familiarity with circumstance or whatever the case may be. I'm focusing on restaurants, but it could be any number of scenarios. So that if multiple peers say, hey, this is wrong. This is an outlier. This is not a reflection of reality. Then the particular micro review might be weighted down so that it is not counted as a legitimate data point. Or if it is, it might be, if everything else is a 1, like an honest negative review could still be a 1, like 100% weight. The bathroom is always stinky. People might say, yeah, it is. This is true. So negative, but true. But if somebody said, I went in the bathroom and I found a human head, that's not true. So that would be silly. So that would be counted down. This person's lying, it's misleading, etc. So I think the ability to keep the micro review honest at that granular level makes the value of the micro review itself greater, especially if they're added together. So now you get a better picture based on these micro review submissions on, what are the bathrooms clean? Is the place in general clean? Is the parking good? Is the customer service experience good? Is the food good? Is the product quality? Maybe it's not a restaurant. Are these things good? And you can actually not only know that things are good or bad, but you would know if they change over time, proactively or otherwise. So to us, this made a lot of sense. So this was one of our fundamentals. Star ratings as opaque indicators would go. More recently, in the last many years between then and now, you are seeing more ability to break down a particular star rating. I'm thinking of Amazon, for example. I think they offer about 3 subcategories. So you give a top level review, 1 to 5 stars, and then you give additional breakdown like value, 3 stars, taste, 4 star, whatever. So they have different subcategories for different product types. So you could do something similar. We're starting to see, value, price, whether it was too expensive, etc. These are okay. They're a step toward, but what you end up seeing is, again, what is a 5-star versus a 4-star rating? What is a 1-star versus a 2-star rating? Should I only be able to give 2 stars? Why can't I give 2.2 stars? So I think the star rating itself is simple, definitely simple, but not at all nuanced, even though it has nuance in it, but it's not nuanced to the consumer, nor is it carrying that nuance with simple averaging or, like I said, if you look at star ratings as dimensioned quantities, dimensions as in units, like feet, if you're a mission planner for a Mars lander, if I use feet and you use meters and we both give a rating of something like, I give it 3 feet and you give it 1 meter. If we just average those, we're going to be, the total is wrong. This has happened in real life. So if you don't have any dimensions to the star ratings, then it doesn't make any sense to add them or do any other mathematical operations on all of them together without taking into account the different dimensions that people are using. And because there's no standard whatsoever, it doesn't really help. You're better off looking at return customer rate, whether it's a restaurant or any other business. Do people come back? So how many people are regulars? That's a better indication than star ratings. In my opinion, that would probably be proven out mathematically. So yeah, there you go. So the average star rating means very little to the people involved even. What does it mean to third parties who've never been there? I know we all do this. Show me the place with 4.5 or more stars. What does that mean? Who knows? And then the star ratings can linger even if there is no useful description given. So if I don't give a 10-paragraph anecdote, I had just flown in from, no, I just say, 2 stars. No explanation, no nothing. Is my review valid on this platform, Yelp or Google Local or whatever? Maybe I'm a frequent enough review submitter so that, okay, there's no real reason to doubt the 2-star review, but without any sort of reason behind it, I'm just giving 2 opaque stars. I have adjusted the average accordingly. If there are only 10 reviews, my 2-star review carries more weight when maybe it shouldn't. Maybe it was because I was jet lagged. I just flew in from wherever, but I didn't share that story. So the stars will linger and you may not have any reason or recourse. So the system itself becomes broken or gameable or less valuable because of what you really could call data mishandling. And then we have rationality. This is just plain old, like, wait a minute, wouldn't it make sense if you're a business owner and you have 5 stars, 20,000 reviews, 5 stars, you're amazing. And then the business owner retires, sells it. New business owner says, ooh, this place is really well regarded. They got 5 stars on Yelp and Google Local and all kinds of articles and foodie mags and all kinds of Instagram and TikTok posts and Raina is crazy, has come in and eaten food like crazy. I know people who know her. That is crazy real. That's a lot of eating. So you have all this attention on the brand, the location. So you're not going to change it, but you're a new owner. You come in, you replace some of the staff, you cut some costs, you change some recipes to make them a little bit more economical to make, but you can still leverage that regard in the marketplace. So you can increase your profits a little bit, offset some of the tenant improvements you have to make or whatever the case is. So there's been a material change in the way that business operates. People are still showing up to the 5-star place, but now it might be more of a 4-star, maybe even a 3.5-star place. And the inverse of that might be true as well. So maybe 3.5-star place, new owner, spiffs the place up a little bit. I was going to say spoofs the place up a little bit. Spiffs the place up a little bit, adjustments to the menu, some better ingredients, some better technique, 5 stars. But they still got the weight, the albatross of a 3.5-star history resting on them. So there they might change the name of the place. That would make more sense. So if it makes sense in one situation to distance the business from the 3.5-star rating, it should make sense from the customer perspective to distance the 3.5-star place from the previous 5-star rating. So it's the fact that over time, the reviews can become more and more misleading as they drift more and more from current reality. So if a particular individual if a particular business or individual who received negative micro reviews was to depart the company, so that is to say, the host was very mean, always gave people a weird look. That person departs the company. Well, that is no longer a factor in whether you should visit that business or not, right? So that is not even a reality anymore. So it should not weigh in the same sense as the food quality or parking, right? Now, if the parking lot is a problem and it's still a problem, then that's going to age appropriately and so on. So if you connect the micro review at a particular time, then, like in the past, with the current state of affairs now, if reality is reflected in the current state of the collection of micro reviews, like, oh, customer service, oh, that person doesn't work here anymore. They are no longer a factor. That person. Now, customer service might still be horrible, but that individual who no longer works there is not one of the components of however that calculation is made. So, and if those micro reviews are totaled, averaged, some sort of statistical analysis is performed, a time series data analysis, whatever, however you want to present them. If it's done transparently, so you can actually see, oh, okay, this doesn't have to be a part of every review. The top line could be, they do really well with customer service. And then if you look down and say, they used to not be doing well, over time they've improved based on customer feedback. That seems okay. Sentiment analysis, and other short text block tools. That is to say, large language models may benefit from more wordy anecdotes, but if you just want to analyze the sentiment of a particular topical micro review, that is customer service, everybody was cool, you can take that as a positive. Now, rather than giving a star rating, you can take the sentiment on a particular issue in a particular topic area. So if you can call out a person by name, I suppose, that might be a privacy concern. But if you said, hey, say Alice and Bob, to use some common names in this space, Alice was great. Bob was not as good in the staff there, and so I would say that about half of my experience was good. So you could do some pretty simple sentiment analysis. I'm totally making this up at this moment, but you can take, rather than a star rating, you could take the way an idea is expressed. You're limiting it with the size of the text block, so this would be an experiment of sorts. You may join a text submission in the micro review with an actual personal weighting, a weight you assign to this assessment, right? Like, I think this was very important or not important, or I think the impact on my experience here was very positive or very negative. So rather than giving a to the world relative, but to you absolute star rating, you can have the person describe what the outcome was for them as a result of this. So that makes it a little bit more clear what was the value, good or bad, of this particular facet of your experience. So you can analyze those. Basically, you can start to pull out trends and comments. And this is something Amazon is doing now with varying degrees of utility and accuracy and so on. You'll see, here's what reviewers are saying, and they'll mark things that are very positive, normal, negative. They'll try to summarize those. A lot of people say these fit really well, but a lot of them also say that they don't fit well, or whatever. So coming up with that one paragraph assessment based on a collection of reviews is hit or miss in my experience. It might improve over time, but that is a similar approach to what we were thinking about. So sentiment analysis on short blocks of text on particular focused topic areas to come up with assessments based on real commentary, not on an opaque star. I'm going to give them 1 star. By the way, you can't give negative star ratings. So you can only go plus or minus 2 stars from the 3-star midpoint. So for some people, 3 stars might be 0, minus 1 star is 2 stars, etc. So because there's no consistency, it's really difficult to treat those in a useful way. Also, so you can enable people to provide more information at a more granular level with dimensions to them, such that when you aggregate, you have a useful aggregation. So you can actually take a relative measurement like, this number of people have a positive experience when it comes to the customer service at this place, with this particular name being mentioned more in the positive or this one in the negative, etc. So I think you can actually draw out more useful information today with some of the tools on hand. So I will just say up front that today in modernity, the way that we would approach this would probably be a little bit different. At the time, though, and here was one that was kind of interesting, and this is where Kevin, Mark, and myself were working on this. So Kevin he said, I have some ideas about some experiments that we could do here. The credibility of the reviewers would be heavily weighted, not with elite status, some designation from a gamification scheme or how many people liked your posts or all that, but with actual peer review, so that an outlier submission or submissions of very low activity, maybe you only posted 2 reviews and they were profoundly negative and also kind of divorced from normal, they're outliers. I was going to say normal reality, but what is that? The food here was horrible, and like 10,000 reviews say the food here is amazing. Right? You're an outlier, and you only posted 2 reviews. So, what's going on here? So if the validity, and by the way, the name of our company was Valid Rate, which is not sexy, it is very on the nose. Your rating is probably not valid. And as I said before, a negative review could be completely valid. You are describing reality. It's legitimate. It's honest. It's provably correct. Whatever the assessment, the bathroom never has toilet paper. Everybody says, yeah, that's true. That is true. That's not a good thing, but it is true. So if you are an outlier and your peers in this reviewing cohort, so like, first of all, it would have to be people who have been to the place or have conducted business with the place. So it couldn't just be random people disagreeing. The business owner or authority could factor into this. But if everybody says, this is bogus, this is wrong, this is passive-aggressive, trolling, robot, inaccurate. If everybody, quote-unquote everybody, if a plurality says, this is probably not right, then the individual post obviously would be weighted down. It would be not credible, less credible. But the poster, over time, their universal credibility on the platform would fall. And this is where that Bayesian inference really factors in. If you become a troll, if you only post bogus reviews, you can post negative reviews. That was the thing here. As long as what you are saying is valid, negative and positive are both weighted equally, at least at first. But if you only make posts, and this could go the other way too, if you only give flowery reviews to places that aren't open or that you've never been to or that don't align with kind of like the general wisdom, like, you're probably not a legitimate customer. You're probably not being honest. You're probably not valid in your assessments. So if the entire system can be sort of continuously reevaluating its submissions and weighting them accordingly, then you get outcomes that probably reflect more reality. So this was going to be an ongoing experiment, obviously, but ranking, weighting, considering individual micro reviews and then trends by a particular reviewer, whether they were particularly off the norms, if you will, for particular types of business or in particular areas. These are all things that you could start to take a look at. So you could actually, and this was not about identifying people. It was about identifying valid ratings so that you would be able to prune away the irrational, the angry, the retaliatory, the competitor, the gamers, the people that want to game the system just to put a place out of business. So there are people that do these things. And so, if you continuously review restaurants that aren't open for business yet because they're still doing tenant improvements, your submissions may be devalued, and that would be reasonable. So I think this would be a valid tool today. I don't know that anyone is doing this or taking this approach, and I've not been overly detailed. There are some methodologies that we had talked about, and there were some things that were to be experimented with. I will say the end of the story of that version of, or that part of the story, we had one person who wanted to be a seed investor, but he was newly married, and his wife said, no, we're buying a house. So he had to pull the money away from the seed investment and put it towards down payment on a house. Okay, that is the way marriage works. You cannot go investing in things without a spouse being at least somewhat supportive. So that's the way that went. My two co-conspirators here, Kevin had just gotten married, not right at that time, but around that time, and actually did buy a house. So he was moving into a new home. So all of the joys of closing and moving, and all the administrata of changing addresses and so on. So that was not major chaos, but it's certainly more chaos than one would want, while at the same time, Mark was, yes, they had I think a 2-year-old, and I believe they had just discovered that they were launching another offspring. So that was another. So if you're going to have a startup and you're going to be bootstrapping, whether you liked it or not, you should not be also moving into new homes and also having additional children. These are things that are way too distracting. So those factors were not favorable for the continued ascent of our idea into deployment. The number, so today, I will say that this is still a good idea though. The number of review platforms has increased. You can pretty much review anything everywhere, anywhere. Sometimes there are star ratings. Other times it's just a foodie post or some other commentary on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube Shorts or Instagram Reels or anywhere. But mostly you do it for the attention. That is to say, if you have a profoundly negative experience and you want people to know about it, you have to make a video, usually a video post that you can place somewhere where everybody will see it. And if you do a good job, news outlets will write multi-hundred word articles, 200, 300, 500 word articles about your TikTok video or your Instagram post, or even sometimes your tweet or whatever they're called on X now. So the ability to amplify your experience, which is probably mostly in the negative case, but sometimes positive. Sometimes there are feel-good versions of this. But if you are able to do that individually, the value to the business, to the population on the whole is like, okay, there's a sensational blip, got a lot of attention. Maybe the particular issue, this happens with like airlines, like a negative review is they kicked us off for no reason, or because maybe race or religion or some other cultural identity. These are dumb circumstances that should not happen. So when they do get attention, a light shown on them, that's probably good. But these are, you kind of depend on people coming upon these stories and making sure they get the attention. So I personally don't think that's necessarily the best way, but that happens. So hopefully good outcomes come from those. But in general, if you do this, the review notion in a more structured and useful way, ideally you would get good outcomes all the time, or a substantial majority of the time, because you could actually treat review inputs as legitimate, as valuable. You could respond to them, and you could indicate that a particular review or facet or micro review at a particular time has since been addressed for, improved or at least acknowledged, like, so-and-so is the best. It's the only reason to work at this or to go to this coffee shop, the best barista ever. And like, well, that person doesn't work here anymore, but it was fun while it lasted. So there could be material changes to the circumstance of the original review versus the current day. These should all be able to be a part of, we have computer technology that can do all this stuff. There's nothing I'm suggesting here that is outlandish, and you don't even have to make it confusing. You should be able to say, should we go to this restaurant, this bar, this coffee shop, this shoe store, this whatever it is? Well, let's take a look. Oh, generally positive, right? You can drill down into that, or you can say, oh, do they have special menu items? Do they serve particular beverage types? You should be able to drill down into what people had to say about that. Like, they don't have any vegan options. Okay, you should be able to know that right up front. Their vegan options are not great. Things like that. Those would be useful, specific things. And by the way, over time, if those things get fixed, once again, they don't stay a part of the picture. In modernity, they have great vegan and vegetarian items, etc. Like, they took those notes, they addressed them, corrected them for the sake of their vegan and vegetarian customers. Quote unquote problem solved. So obviously the tools have improved over the years. So when we were pondering this in the before 2010, so say 2005, 2008, there were no multi-billion-dollar companies competing for a large language model speed and agility and so on. There was Bayesian inference. That's been around for a long time. There was simple text analysis. You could use the normal language processing tools that have also been around for a while. But today the tools for analyzing the human side have improved. And if you couple those with actually useful, correct, transparent, and technically correct handling of the data so that you can weight things accordingly. So by weighting, I mean, some things are worth 100% and some things are not because of the reviewer source or the age, right? So if a submission from 10 years ago is to be counted, it may not have the same weight that goes with it just because it's 10 years old. Circumstances probably have changed. You can look at explicit changes also, but over time, some reviews, it's likely that the business has just changed over 10 years. So to leave a review from 10 years ago seems less valid. Is it zero valid or is it 50% valid? That's subject to discussion. But the inference that could be used to arrive at a useful and meaningful indicator, could be tuned and adjusted. There are certainly no shortage of mathematical tools floating around. Those have been around forever. You could apply some classification rules. You can use some machine learning techniques that have also been tuned over the years. Not everything is a large language chat GPT style model. Sometimes you're actually classifying things and making use of different inputs to derive certain outputs based on machine learning, deep machine learning, right, based on actual data analysis. So there's a lot of tools in the toolbox, more than there were. Some of them are maybe more applicable, more useful, and certainly more interesting. Like I said, Amazon's doing some interesting things with how they classify and categorize different review. They don't do micro reviews, but they basically try to extract micro review categories of sorts. So they'll say, well, I'll let you look for yourself. But so they're doing something kind of similar with, I think, hit or miss outcomes, but somewhat useful. These are on products more than anything else. So, if everybody's buying the same pair of sneakers, some people will comment on the arch support, some people on the lacing, some people on the color, some people on the quality of the manufacturer. You can pretty much extract from a collection of details, a collection of dimensions that will be summarizable, and you can pull sentiment out by doing textual analysis. So the tools are there. The methodology is still evolving, I think. But interesting times on the Amazon platform, for example. I don't see something similarly useful happening in Google, Yelp, and like retail business, customer service, more interactive businesses, food, retail purchases, service-oriented businesses in general. Comedy. How do you review a comedy club? You can't do that on Amazon. Everybody's going to have a different take, a different experience, and so on. So I think once you introduce, there are fewer degrees of freedom in an Amazon review. I think one take home, though, Amazon reviews will sometimes mix, and this happens also with app reviews on Play Store, iTunes. The company, say you're reviewing the Amazon application on your mobile device. So you give it 1 star because Amazon customer service sucks. I'm just saying somebody could write that. Well, your 1 star review of Amazon customer service is not a review of the application on the Play Store or the Play Store on Google and iTunes App Store, right? App Store on Apple, iTunes, iPhone. So the 1 star review is misplaced, but I don't believe it gets removed or accounted for any differently. So you're reviewing the wrong thing. If you want to review Amazon customer service, that's not the place to do it. There probably is no place to do it. So just don't buy things there. So if you are reviewing a particular, if you go to a comedy club and you say the comedians sucked, I don't like this place. Well, the comedians are not there every week. They change, they rotate all the time. So you can't give a review to a venue for the performers that were there by reviewing the performers. So there are some subtleties that are not present in an Amazon limited degree of freedom review on products. And similarly, you can't review like the product arrived at my door late. Shipping took longer than expected, 2 stars. And you're like, that's not a product review. That's a shipping review. So I think by mixing all these together, by making them all opaque, you're doing a disservice not only to the business, not only to the shipping method. These are things that could be improved, but the feedback is being lost in a opaque, averaging of like the product was great, but it arrived late, 2 stars. Well, so it's a 5-star product, and UPS or FedEx or Amazon Logistics or whoever should get the 2-star part, but the product itself, maybe the seller was great, maybe you called them and they were very helpful. So customer support, everything looked good, but because it arrived late, you give a 2-star review, you've devalued most of that experience, and that has an impact on future purchases from other buyers and so on. So we have the technology to be more precise about this in useful ways without being overly taxing. You're not going to ask people to fill out a 30-page form on each review, but you can definitely do some extra work, put in some extra effort, some extra analysis, and make use of the embarrassment of riches in our toolbox now with so many machine learning tools in general, whether it's large language models, LLMs, or any of a variety of other things that are just more classification and pattern recognition. So classification is a big thing. It doesn't have to be tokenization of language strings and so on. It could literally be, this looks like a positive review of the arch support in the sneaker. Okay. So finally, by involving the business owner or managers or people who have authority to take criticism and act upon it with a continuous assessment and improvement process, you enable the review step, right? Most people are not paid for their reviews, although that may be changing. People are influencers now, so you get paid for mentioning products, and you have to disclose that, or you might give positive reviews for cash and so on. That's another problem. But if you actually say you are taking the time to create a structured review, micro reviews that we can make use of and apply weights to and manage and handle as real data from which we can derive real information to give to the business owner or to the management and so on. Say, hey, you have a customer service issue that you might want to take a look at, or hey, your bathrooms are stinky, or your food quality is diminishing. People are noticing it here, and actually enable. So this might even be a subscription service, but it is not an opportunity for the business to filter those, to remove them. It's an opportunity for them to act on them and then indicate we address this issue and have that resolution appear in this collection of micro reviews that says, hey, this was true, we've addressed that, and there's an opportunity for that item, the addressing of the item, to be acknowledged by the original micro reviewer, but also by others who might say, yeah, that is fixed. The micro review submitter may never interact on the platform again. They may have submitted one I had a really bad experience. I'm just going to say it right here, bam. And then they don't really review things in general. So, okay. But if a plurality of people, if some statistically significant group of people in a cohort, geographical, customer, population, say, yeah, this was fixed. The bathrooms are no longer stinky. That should be valuable to everyone. And that is actually doable. So it would lead to an improved, that's an Amazon product making noises at me. I don't know if you heard that. You actually end up with improved experiences for customers, better outcomes for customers, better experiences for people working at a company, because they actually, if they take feedback constructively, they can make a better product or service, which ideally will make their day better. Right now, you're not going to have so many angry customers. We fixed the problems that people were getting upset about. Now we're having more business. Everybody's doing better. So you actually build in a feedback loop that is actually useful, and you can demonstrate improvement, responsiveness. You can reassess a current status from the past and make the current status reflect the present. Like, yeah, the things from 2 months ago, all fixed, totally turned around. And you've seen this in the restaurant, bar, hair salon turnaround shows, reality shows, I think on Discovery. I don't even know what channel these are on anymore, but you've seen reality shows based on this. You could very easily make this a part of a review platform to enable a business to take constructive criticism, weighting the trolls, taking the trolls down a peg, right? So passive aggressive, retaliatory, angry, trolling. Maybe there's a sliver of validity in what they have to say or what they write. But for the most part, you want to have a population of people who are providing feedback with the hope that something that they like, whatever it is, business, restaurant business, a retail outlet, a coffee shop, whatever, they like it. They're giving feedback because they want to love it. So that was the presumption this whole time, was that you're asking your customers, your users, your people that you've interacted with, you're asking them to help you make your product better. If they're doing it only to impress others, build up their own clout, to put a business down, to entertain people, that's not as valid. But if somebody says, hey, this place is really great, hey, this place could be better if the bathrooms were better, to keep going with that theme, then those are the sorts of things that make the business better, make the experience better for current and future consumers. So there you go. So that was valid rate from about, I'm going to say 15 to 17 years ago. It's a long time ago. It still seems valid to me. I am kind of wondering aloud, and I did have this notion when I was creating the notes for today's episode. I did not begin writing the notes with this in mind, but now that in the context of the MyMuni platform that we're building on the Innovate for Vegas Foundation MyMuni project, that will be the basis of the information sharing platform startup that we're talking about on the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. Certainly business reviews that take advantage of this methodology would be an interesting experiment. And in the context of an information sharing platform, we could try that idea out without a all or nothing, or we started a business for this valid rate review scheme as in methodology, nothing nefarious. So we had this notion, we can try it out in this context of an information sharing platform that is data driven and so on. We don't actually have to go out and start from zero. Ideally, a functional information sharing platform would be an interesting place to try things where you're basically crowdsourcing information, but making good and mathematically correct and valid use of it for better outcomes. So that might be interesting. So now, as we reach the end of today's episode, I honestly think that this will have to be added to the mix for the In Las Vegas platform when it launches sometime soon, real soon. Army of One, don't forget. On that note, My voice is barely hanging on. I thank you for doing the same. We are coming to the end of the episode. Don't forget, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo and ko-fi.com/DanHugo. That's ko-fi.com/DanHugo. You will find those links wherever you found this audio program if you are able to see the episode description in the links section. I'm going to redo all the show notes to include original publish date, original record and original publish date, which I keep track of anyway. The current state of affairs for podcast publishing tools could be better. I don't know where I can write a micro review about that, but it would be nice if you knew when I recorded things, not the platform's view of a publication date. So I'm going to go through and redo all those. And we do have to start making an appearance on YouTube, at least for the audio podcast section, now that Google Podcasts are gone. More visibility, and then eventually, hopefully, start thinking about some streaming on YouTube where it makes sense, whether it's live streaming with like interaction, chat, comment chat, or offline video discussions, or who knows what's going on. But I'm going to go and have some tea now, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and think about Valid Rate. That would not be the name of it. Some cool 21st century naming for these Vegas times would be more appropriate, but think about it. We'll see if we can make it happen. Thank you so much for listening, as always.